everyone. We're Maren and Angela, and this is Homeschool Unrefined. We created this podcast to change the conversation about homeschool. This is a place where we encourage each other to do less, be ourselves, embrace natural learning, and keep homeschool simple, real, and fun. We are longtime friends, Minnesotans, and practiced homeschool parents with our master's degree in education. We are an inclusive and non-sectarian podcast and community. We believe Black Lives Matter and affirm LGBTQ+ families. We hope this is a place where we can all learn and grow together.
This is episode 170, How We Homeschool, Video Games and Unschooling with Deb Shin. We are going to get to that in just a minute. First, hello, Maren.
Hi.
I think you are up for the aha moment this week.
I am, yes. I have an aha moment that I have had to learn several times throughout my parenting, and I think this might resonate with some of you. It is, don't overthink, overanalyze, or project too far into the future based on your children's behavior right now. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Tell me what you mean.
Okay, so I tend to do this a lot, and I think I like to ruminate about things. I really do. I like to think deeply, and maybe it's because I'm an intuitive person too, where I just I think of an idea, and then it just rolls around in my head. It just rolls around my head for so long, you know? And so what happens is sometimes as a parent, my child will get into some kind of habit or interest, or it's like a misbehavior that they're just kind of into. Mm-hmm. And I can very easily roll that behavior around in my head for so long that I start to project into the future, like what they're going to be like as an adult with this behavior.
Yeah.
Or, what is this going to look like as an adult? Oh my goodness, this child is, never going to learn to not write on the walls. Which is, obviously not even logical.
For sure.
But when it happens, I just, I wonder what is this going to turn into as an adult? Another one is, one of my kids was a biter.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
as a toddler / preschool age. And I was, you can attest to this, Angela, so worried. And I couldn't stop the behavior. I mean, I tried everything and there was nothing that I could, really do to mitigate it from happening all the time. Yeah. It was just an impulse at the time for this child. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, now, of course, they are
not biters,
not a biter, not even really aggressive, at all.
Yeah.
Almost could I put a little fire under you? Sometimes a little bit. So it's completely changed.
Yeah.
And I think that we do this, and especially now that our kids are getting older, I have 3 teenagers almost. Yeah, so do you. Yeah. And as teenagers, they're so close to being an adult, and so sometimes these behaviors, I'm like, oh my gosh, this child is never going to pick up their own clothes off the floor.
Right.
Or they're never going to care about the state of their kitchen or they're not going to have compassion for people because they're not being kind to their younger sibling who's, anyway. So there are a lot of things that I can very easily overanalyze, and then sometimes even over talk with my kids about. It can be a real simple lesson, could take a minute, 30 seconds. We're going to do this another way, and this is what I want you to, this is how we're going to do it, or something. It can be very easy. And it's easy for me to, overanalyze it right in front of my child. I mean, I think this is what's going to happen.
Compassion.
Give a lesson on compassion when it's really not needed.
Right. When really they were just annoyed with their sibling for a minute.
Right. And it's just, it takes a 30-second reminder maybe every time they do it rather than one long monologue.
Yeah.
You know.
And then worrying later. You're probably worrying later about how they're never going to have empathy.
Absolutely. and this can absolutely translate into homeschooling where, you know, my child isn't doing the dividing they, in my mind, should be doing at this age or something. And then, you know, you think, well, they're never going to be an engineer or something, you know, you could easily go down this very long rabbit hole of all the things that's going to limit them in their life if they can't do division right now or something. Yeah. So, and that is just not the case. And I have to say, even if they're not doing the math or the reading skills or the writing skills that you think they should be doing right now, that has nothing to do with their gifts and where they're headed in the future.
Sure.
Nothing.
You know what? Things change. Things change quickly.
Very quickly.
Or things change quickly, or they change over time when you didn't even notice that that's not a problem anymore. And we forget that. I think I hear things like, well, I always knew that my kid was going to be this or do this because when they were 3 or 4 or 5, they were really into this and you could just tell. And so those kind of narratives stick with you when your kid is 3 or 4 or 5 or 13 and doing a thing that you don't want them doing.
Yes.
So I think it's...
Or you wish they would be doing. They're not doing something that you wish they would be doing.
Things change. They change more often than not. So...
Absolutely.
But it's hard when you're in it. It's really hard when you're in it. Is. And your kids are older. It's hard.
It's like you have to give yourself this affirmation from, you know, like this, you know, write it down now and then go look at it when you're at that time, you know, in the moment, because you will not feel, you don't feel that way. I don't feel like I can, you know, just let it go sometimes.
Yeah.
So
that's a good one. I like it. Universal.
Thanks.
Comes up a few times a year.
Sometimes, some seasons more often.
Yes. All right. Well, our sponsor this week is Nextbooks. Nextbooks.org without a T. So NEXBOOKS.org is fixing school so that it's no longer boring and irrelevant. They make learning fun with engaging videos and have a mastery-based model so you can take quizzes as many times as you'd like. The courses are self-directed, so you can work as fast or as slow as you'd like, doing school around your schedule rather than the other way around.
Right. And these courses are actually really exciting. They are things that your children would love to know. I mean, anything that your child is interested in is probably there. There's 3D printing, investing, you know, tools 101. I mean, it's not just like these cookie cutter classes. These are things that it expands into real life. And with the self-directedness, it's, you know, it's kind of on your terms and maybe a better fit than if your child is not loving maybe like these live classes. This might be the perfect thing for them.
You know, one of my kids would love the build your own computer because one of my kids is real into that right now and wanting all the parts. So that might be a good one for them. It's just $19 a month for a subscription and you can take any or all of the courses. So there's no penalty for just trying out a new course or a new subject to see if it excites you.
Awesome.
You can get your free trial today at nextbooks.org and 10% off your subscription by using the discount code UNREFINED. Nextbooks.org, where school is no longer boring and irrelevant.
All right. Did you know that we have a Patreon community? It is a group of our supporters, and we are adding more and more content on Patreon all the time. We have about 4 episodes, well, at least 4 episodes, extra episodes per month that we put on Patreon, plus extended interviews of anybody we've talked with, including Deb Shin today.
Yes, and so if you would like to join us on Patreon, it's only $5 a month, and you get 4 extra episodes. You can go to patreon.org/homeschoolunrefined. This month or this week, if you join, you will get the audio and video from our coffee hour live that we did last week. We also just recently did a check-in where Maren and I kind of talk a little bit more personally about what's going well what's hard right now, and how our self-care is going. All right, let's move on to our conversation this week. Our conversation is with Deb Shin. Deb is a Duke and Yale alum. She is a video game marketer turned homeschooler. She homeschools her 4 kids, and she tells us her story of her homeschooling journey. And we really appreciated her insight, and we hope you enjoy this conversation with Deb. If you do, you can find her on Instagram. She is at home_and_beyond. Hello, Deb. Welcome to Homeschool Unrefined.
Hey, ladies. It's so good to see you. Hi. I'm excited to see your faces.
Yay.
Yeah.
Your voices are very familiar in my ears, so I love putting your voice to your faces together. It's great. Thanks so much for having me.
So fun.
Yeah. Could you start by telling our audience just a little bit about yourself, like your family, your job, your homeschool kind of history a little bit?
Yeah, sure. As you guys mentioned, my name is Deb. I'm a second generation Korean American, and second generation just basically means that my parents are from South Korea, and I was actually born in Korea. Oh. And my family moved to the Chicagoland area when I was 5 years old. And, like a lot of, I think, just immigrant families, we come to, the U.S. with lots of hopes and dreams. And a big part of that was, better opportunities with education and jobs. So, that combined with, I think, just like my perfectionist and like success-oriented personality, I kind of came through the usual ranks of school and tried to, really excel, I think, in academics. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up, going to college like a lot of other people on the school track. And that's where I met my husband. Mm-hmm. And I studied engineering there and also just dabbled in, it's funny because I know you guys are educators.
Yes.
So my mom was a teacher and there was always a streak of education in me. And so I explored education a bit. I got my elementary education certificate. Mm-hmm. In my undergrad and student taught. But I've also just had this really creative streak for me too. And so during that time, I, explored, I was part of an a cappella group. And so, I kind of am full of lots of different interests.
That's so
and
great.
And then after graduation, I pivoted from my engineering studies into online marketing. And so I moved to New York.
Wow.
And worked in finance for a little while doing, online marketing there and fell in love with marketing. And that was kind of like a great kind of realization, a combination of like my people orientedness, creativity. And so I thought, maybe I need to learn more about marketing. So then I got my MBA.
Oh, wow.
So then did that. And I was like, okay, I really want to be in a creative industry doing something where I'm working with people. And so I ended up with a job in video game marketing. And so that's what I did for 10 years. Just doing, marketing some of the biggest franchises and brands in video games. And so it was really fun.
So awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I did that. And then during those 10 years, I had 4 children. So
wow.
I'm a mom. So I have my oldest daughter who's 9.5, and then I have twin identical boys in the middle who are 6.5 now. And then my youngest boy is about to turn 4. And
wow.
So that's what I did. And then, we can go more into how I pivoted into homeschooling, but that's kind of my background, and I'm homeschooling full time now.
Yeah. So did you start homeschooling right away, or was that, and how did it come about for you? How did you decide to homeschool?
Yeah, that's, I just thought homeschoolers were weird. I know that's what a lot of people think, right? Yep. And my mom is just a staunch, just like, public educator. She was an educator in Korea. And so obviously she believed in the education system here in America. And so it was just totally outside of like, I think what I felt safe with or what I wanted to do. And really, I think one of the stories of kind of parenting, right, is that our children lead us to places that we don't expect to go.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what it was for us. I mean, we have our ideas and our thoughts about what we would like when we have a family, but when there's a face looking at you, and they have their own desires and wants, it makes you rethink what you should do, right? So that's kind of how I ended up in homeschooling. It's like when they were going to, my children were at a daycare while I was working full time. I love my job. But, over time, as it came closer and closer to her going to kindergarten, we checked out some different schools, and then we found this one school that we loved. And one of the requirements was that we needed to drop her off for a full day. She was not up for it. I don't know if you had those experiences.
Absolutely.
And you're like, this is what we do. Kids do this. And she just wouldn't have it. And so my husband, had to stay with her for like half the day. She didn't even stay the full day.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then, the administrator said, she really needs to stay a full day in order for this to work. And she needs to find some, and it's a wonderful school. It was like a full school combined with Montessori. I was like,
I'm sure
this is way better than, like other standard schools you'd be at. And so, and I decided just to ask her, like, do you want to go? Do you want to go for a full day? I mean, didn't you like it? And she's like, no, I don't want to go. And I just was like, do I have any options here? What do I do? And so that's, I think, when I came to this place of like, maybe I need to explore homeschooling, because I could tell that she wasn't ready.
She wasn't ready. Yeah.
How amazing that your 5-year-old was able to show up for herself. I mean, a lot of 5-year-olds just do it, even though maybe they might not feel ready, but they just do it. But she told you, she let you know what she needed.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
And you responded.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Good
it's
for
scary,
you.
right?
It's so scary.
Am I willing to change my lifestyle for this?
Right.
I mean, so many other people decide not to, and that's okay, right?
Right.
But so it was just a lot of soul searching, I think, over a course of a year or so, as she was going to, have to go to. I mean, we were in Texas at the time, and you don't have to start school, I think, till you're 7.
Yeah.
So we had some flexibility, but I knew that I needed to kind of make a decision one way or the other.
Right.
Yeah, starting with my oldest.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and I wonder, I feel like that's how many of us start, is that the initial process of going to school for either our oldest, or maybe it's not the oldest, just doesn't work.
One of the kids,
it just doesn't
somebody.
And then we're forced to figure something else out.
Right.
Yeah. I like that forced.
Yeah.
Things have to become uncomfortable, right?
Right. Right.
Change.
Because I think for a lot of us, homeschooling maybe wasn't even on our radar at all until we were kind of forced into making a decision. Like, are we gonna do this? Are we doing this?
Yeah.
That's really familiar to me, because my oldest was similar. Like, she couldn't go to a full day, and I looked hard at that time. It was when they were changing over from like half day to full day for kindergarten, and there was one school that was still doing that she could go to half day. Now all the other kids went full day, but they let her just go in the morning, and that's what we did. And she was still so tired by the time she got home, like just exhausted from this morning. And so then when she was about to go into first grade, I was like, I just don't think we're going to be able to do this. And that's when we started thinking about homeschooling too. So, all right. So do you have a certain homeschool philosophy, or just like a certain type of homeschool you utilize?
Yeah. So, it's been a bit of a transition. I've been homeschooling for 3 years now. So not a veteran by any means, like you both, but, the first year, I dove into Charlotte Mason homeschooling. When I was researching homeschools, that really kind of jumped out at me. The Charlotte Mason, I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with the Charlotte Mason style, just with, rich literature, getting outside in nature, just like a balanced diet of, nature study and art and music and all this stuff. And it just seems so beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, this is it. No tests, no worksheets, no facts-based learning. And so it felt different enough from the system that I was used to that I was like, this is it. This isn't school at home.
Yeah, right.
You hear that a lot, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah. Like, don't try to recreate school at home. So I was like, yes, Charlotte Mason isn't school at home. And then, like, lo and behold, over time, I'm doing Charlotte Mason school at home.
What does that look like?
Yeah, and what I mean by that is it's like, there's these methods and, subject areas that, like, you're saying, like, this is like a balanced feast for your children, right? It's like 10 minutes of math, and you do 10 minutes of reading, and on the surface, all that sounds great, right? And like, I'd say like the first half of the year, we were all pretty, like, my oldest and I were pretty excited because it's new and we're learning and we're trying something different.
Right.
But I think over time, I just started noticing that there was more pushback, and, we all get that, right? Like, at some point.
Definitely.
And it's like, but this geography book is so interesting. It's way more interesting than anything, like a textbook you would read in school. Why don't you like it?
Yeah.
Just that, like, you get when you sit down to learn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, okay. And you still push through, but there's something inside of you that's like, just kind of grates on you, right? Like, what's so not exciting about this? Like, why isn't this fun?
Exactly.
And with 3 like little boys, like not little, but like preschoolers that were rambunctious and energetic. Oftentimes, I felt like I was trying to get through this checklist with my oldest, and seeing the 3 as a distraction. And a lot of the conversation that I was seeing on these like Charlotte Mason forums and community was like trying to problem solve. How do you get through lessons with your oldest, with your school children, right? And like, how do you keep your younger ones occupied? And I just started feeling this dichotomy of like checklist for the older one, keep the little ones distracted and busy and out of the way.
Yeah.
And that dichotomy also was sort of eating at me. I'm like, this doesn't feel harmonious. Like, this isn't, like, I'm trying to achieve this checklist with one person and spending 80% of my energy, right? Doing this right, whatever that means. And then my children, boys were getting like my leftovers and my yelling and screaming, like, get out of the way, go do this, go play with your brothers, right? And more and more, I'm seeing my oldest, like, seeing her brothers have fun and doing pretend play or whatever else. She wants to go run and join them, and I'd be like pulling her back, like, no, come back, we got to finish this lesson. And the day would just drag. Like, we'd be done at like 3 p.m. with like multiple breaks, and then by the time it's over, I'm like, go do whatever you want. Like, I got through my checklist. You guys go, whatever. I don't even care what you're interested in anymore.
Right.
And it was just, there wasn't a lot of, emotional energy left over. Right.
Totally.
Anyway, so all that to say, I got to another painful point of just like, this isn't working. This isn't working. And I had some sort of seed. I don't know if it was listening to, you guys are familiar with Julie Bogart. With Brave Writer. Maybe it was her. Somewhere I'd heard something about unschooling. And at first I was like, that's crazy. Like, kids watching YouTube and playing video games all day. No, that's just irresponsible, right? So I'd always just like been like, no, that's not us. But I just got so desperate. I was like, maybe there's something there that I'm missing, So that's when I was more open-minded and decided, let me just explore from, research and science, what people are saying about self-directed education and unschooling. So really the beginning of, I think our second year was when I just became desperate enough to just start listening and being open-hearted about it. And so I'd say for the past couple of years, it's been more or less an unschooling journey for us at this point. Yeah.
And does that feel better for you?
Oh yeah. It feels it's so much more life-giving than just kind of this checklist approach. And again, I come back to this idea of like, okay, I was spending so much of my energy and time and stress, like, and anxiety over the curriculum choices, right? Like, I was like, okay, what book do we read this term? What nature, whatever, like, what focus of nature should we do? And I felt myself like spending all this time and energy on what they should be learning,
Yeah.
and I wasn't observing them as children, and like, what are their interests? Where are they coming from? They have a voice too, right? And so I think all of these kind of frustrations with Charlotte Mason, at least the way I was implementing it, I was able to kind of, with unschooling, just kind of pull back and pull my own expectations back and what I was expecting, the knowledge they should have, and started saying, what questions do they have?
Right.
Because here I am forcing my questions on them, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure they have questions. I'm not creating space for it, and I'm not valuing it. I'm not asking, giving them the space to explore, the best part of their days to explore that, right?
So great. And in that way, you get to engage all of your children.
Oh, yeah.
In that model, it's so different, especially when our kids are younger. And my kids they're probably, I think it's almost exactly the same. I had my oldest, and then twins, and then a younger, and then a younger child. So like when my oldest was school age and I was trying to get her to do things at the table, which she was not into, I was working so hard, and I was like, how does anyone do this? How does anyone do this? Because like the youngest is, literally peeling a cucumber in the kitchen. Like, what is going on? This 1-year-old, like this is not sustainable. We can't keep doing this anymore. So like when we can engage everybody's minds and together.
Yes.
And, have these great experiences as a family, learning just happens. I mean, it happens. And then you don't have to divide your time between this formal learning and this informal and just like supervision.
I think that really took off a lot of pressure, right? Kind of this arbitrary, artificial sort of stress and system that I was putting myself. I mean, no one was telling me this, right? I had to learn for myself, like how do I thrive? How do my children thrive? How do we have just enough rhythm and routine and structure that like we get to pursue the things we want, but it's not, it's not a checklist,
right?
Like must be done or else type of feel, which I think was kind of just definitely not life-giving for us. And also just like, creating that space, like where we see our children for like who they really are.
Right.
And that's scary because that means like they can say no to you, at the right age of 7 or 8, which was happening, right? It's like, oh no, like if I let her in on her own education, she might not want to do Charlotte Mason at all.
Exactly.
She might not want to do artist study, but oh no, like she might, I think that the idea that the scariest part, I think, was just being okay if my children were to say no.
Right.
And then fully embracing their yeses.
Yes.
And trusting that, okay, when I say yes to my children, avenues will open up that I hadn't thought of. Yeah. And we'll go from there. Right.
Exactly. So. That is so good. So, okay. After all, hearing how you kind of transformed into this more unschooly approach, do you have any specific like resources or curriculum that you do use, or like where do you draw from the most?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I am really grateful for the Charlotte Mason sort of education and just everything that I've learned from there, because in and of itself, all those things they're beautiful, you know?
They are.
And so it was just more, I think, the expectation around and the way that those things were implemented, like these have to be done at this time, at this, at this rate, with this kind of systematized approach. And the way I like to think about it is like, the way we as adults learn, right? It's like when I was interested in unschooling at first, it was like I binged on a podcast, I read all the books, and then I just wanted to talk with people about it,
Yeah.
And so I think the Charlotte Mason sort of like resources that I've kind of become familiar with, like some of the great books, are things that I have in our library and that I still continue to kind of look at every now and then and say, oh, like maybe that would be a great novel, or, this one of my kids might be interested in learning more about this habitat and the whatever, like whatever year in the Charlotte Mason curriculum has this wonderful, nature study book that I think might, one of my boys might enjoy. So I do like to look at, continue to kind of sometimes just look at the Charlotte Mason reading list for just recommendations on just wonderful books that my children might enjoy. I like Read Aloud Revival. I'm not necessarily part of their program, but I do enjoy like seeing their books recommended for different age groups and series. So I love kind of pulling from there. Also, we are a big surprise video gaming family. So ironic, like the one thing that I was like, my children will not game all day, and like I was in gaming all day for 10 years. So so we play a lot of Nintendo games around here, as well as some tablet games. And so we make a lot of space and room for the children to explore their favorite, game franchises and characters. And so we can go more into that, as we talk about kind of like what our days look like. But we're definitely a video game schooling family. And then, of course, there's so the other thing I want to mention in terms of books was I like looking at beautiful feet books for history, so as like different seasons come by, like let's say it's Independence Day or different holidays, just looking for diverse books from different cultures. So that's been a great resource. And then we use YouTube and podcasts a lot. I know you guys do as well.
Yes.
We love Pinna. I don't know if you've heard of Pinna.
Yes. We did that for a while. Yeah.
Okay. I know it's a little bit more for the younger ages.
Yep.
So it's like kind of perfect for where my kids are at.
It is.
And so we really love this one. If people want to check it out, they have 3 episodes on Apple called Grim, Grimmer, Grimmest.
Okay.
And it's the Grimm fairy tales.
Oh, fun.
Produced so wonderfully. I mean, even my husband and I will listen to it. This is so interesting. They have like sound effects and different voices.
So
like
great.
The kings and the princes and the goblins. So we like to listen to that. We also enjoy Vooks. I don't know if you know Vooks. It's kind of like animated books. Books come to life. And so they have words written on it. And so it's kind of fun when we discover a book that we've read, or the opposite, right? Like we'll see a show on books, and then we have the books in our lap. And so we do it. That's a really fun way for us to explore.
So great.
And then just honestly, it's a lot of radical downtime and open play for us.
So great.
Just surrounding my like polymer clay. We make clay things out like Nintendo characters, and so I help my kids make those things. And just having a lot of just craft books and origami books around. And so, the kids just get to kind of like, what do I feel like today? You know?
Yes.
And so it's really just supplying a lot of open-ended kind of loose parts, play and imagination right now at this age, that may change as they each get older, but, so those are kind of our tent poles, I'd say, in terms of curriculum or things that we dive into.
I love that. Yeah. That's awesome.
So what, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what does a typical day look like for you?
It's hard to predict because at any given season or day, everyone they're kind of going in different directions, but I like to think of it as like just-in-time learning. I know you guys have kind of explored this idea, but just like strike the iron when it's hot, right?
Yes.
And it's leaving enough room and space and energy that I can come alongside them to take advantage of that, right?
Exactly.
So like one of the things, for example, like each of my kids have like at any given season, like a staple game that they're working on or that they're exploring. So, for example, we have a really slow start to our day. And then, once we all wake up, people wake up when they want. That's just kind of where we are in our season right now. We've made it that way. And then they'll kind of gravitate towards their tablets or the game that they've been playing. Yeah. So we let them do that. And then, we eat. And then once I've kind of gotten everyone fed, I join them, in the living room. And so I'll be like, hey, what are you progressing on today? So for example, my oldest is working through a new Animal Crossing New Horizons update just came out. And I put that on the calendar. That goes on our calendar.
That's exciting.
We count down.
I think I heard about that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And so all day, literally yesterday, we were like troubleshooting, getting it all downloaded. And so like that, like, for example, this past week was like, her kind of preparing for that update, and we're doing research about it, talking about it. I was asking her, what are you most excited about? And then all last night was just her just telling me, oh my God, I love this cafe. Here's what we're doing. And I said, well, what do you have planned for tomorrow? She's like, well, tomorrow it's all about cooking and baking,
So great.
So it's like, it's kind of that, like, sort of leaning into what they're doing and observing both I think, just observing all the skills, that they're learning and the joy that they're having. So then I might at that point move on to, my twin boys, who at that moment might be working on their Animal Crossing Pocket Camp tablet game. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but you catch all these really cool, like, wildlife in the ocean. And so they've become so like, I know more about fish than I ever have before. It's like they're catching like koi fish and I don't know, like flatfish, and we're just kind of, and it's made them more interested in sea animals.
That's amazing.
So we might take that interest, like, and like next week, for example, it's like, hey, do you guys want to go visit the koi pond at the botanical garden? It's like, yeah, sure, let's go. So we might weave in, a visit to the botanical gardens to check out the fish that they're interested in.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then my youngest is really into cars right now. So I might catch him watching, Cars 1, 2, or 3 for the 50th time. And he'll kind of have that on and then go and grab his car toys and just imagine, right, being a fast car.
Aww.
And then we kind of let that unfold. And then there's a point where the kids kind of get restless. They see the sun is outside. And they're like, can we go outside? I'm like, yeah, let's go. So we go out and we'll ride our bikes. I'll pull out their scooters or do what they want. Sometimes they just want to, play on the swing. We have a small playground in our backyard. So we we stay, we do a lot of things kind of in our backyard just to get some outside time and fresh air. And then in the afternoon, they're ready for just to kind of chill. So usually the 3 kids by that point, they might be back on their tablets, but then sometimes they just get bored of that too.
Yeah.
That's when they do a lot of their open-ended play. So like they'll grab like the Magnetiles or Legos and just start building worlds, or that's when they like to grab their clay. And some of the stuff that they've been exploring, I think, that we've explored together in the mornings, they'll kind of play out in the afternoons. Usually my youngest and I try to take a quick nap if we can, or at least try to like close my eyes or just, kind of get a little downtime. And then, and then the evening is just, kind of more of the same. And really the evening, I find that for us, in part, it took a little trial and error to get to this place. Like they're more ready to kind of just settle down. They got all their wiggles out. They've explored their imagination and they're kind of ready for mom to like, they're more open to like mom giving them something, right? They're like, and so we actually get a lot of great read-alouds done at night. So like I have staggered bedtimes with my kids. And so I have like a book going or a series going with my oldest.
So great.
And then like with my twins, they're really into like space right now. And again, like ocean animals. So we have all these DK Smithsonian books about science and animals, and then also elements. They love elements right now. I don't know how, but like they love gold, right? So like last night we literally were like talking about titanium and calcium and how that's important for your body. And I'm like, this is so crazy. Like I never thought I'd be reading about elements for nighttime reading, bedtime. And so and I just think back, because before, we all like know that reading is important, right? I used to like force the children to like sit down, we're having breakfast at a certain time because mom was going to read aloud. And they, they kind of put up with it for a while, but what's in their heads is like the next like level they wanted to reach in their game, right? Or like
exactly,
they just had their own goals. Like, and I was trying to, because it was important to me, I was trying to get out of the way in my day and make it a part of it, And for a while, they kind of put up with it, but then I just realized the kids would start walking off while I'm reading a story. I'm like, come back.
Yeah, totally.
It's all been trial and error like that.
I have found, I actually have found the same thing while homeschooling. I feel like our kids needed, especially when they were about that age, needed like the whole day to get their wiggles out. And seriously, like sometimes it was between 3 and 5 is when we could do anything like mom directed at all, if anything, but like, if anything, or like after dinner or something, like that's when I feel like they were able to actually, not relax their bodies, but like calm their bodies enough to actually sit and do anything remotely, at a table or anything sometimes, So, and I found that too. I think that's so interesting that you said that, because I did feel like so then I would often like, not worry, but like, be in a little angst all day. When are we going to get anything done? But of course they were doing so much. And I just needed, that's when I had to consciously open up my eyes and say, this is the learning. This is totally the learning. And if there's anything I want to sneak in there, it might be, at 5:30 or 6 or something. Yeah. Or read aloud or read aloud at bedtime and a great discussion or whatever. It's all learning, and you just cannot plan when that's going to happen for your kid who needs to move 8 hours a day or something. You cannot force this like calm time when their bodies and minds are not ready for it. So I love that. That's great.
Yeah, and it just took a lot of trial and error and really observation, and then just being flexible with things not being the way that I might prefer them, like if I had it my way, right?
I know.
And, but it's been so much richer and just so much more like, I don't know how to say it. It's like, like we get to read together. We don't have to read together.
Exactly.
There's something about that's so just freeing, right? And it brings us back to like the relationship and the trust that we're trying to build.
There's something about like when there's required reading. We were just talking about this on, was it our podcast last week, Angela, when you were like, let's not talk about let's not require things all the time. But I would, the word require even, but even, if it's, you need to read 30 minutes, suddenly for many people, I'm not even going to say kids, but for many people then the joy's gone. Like you just put a number on the amount of minutes I have to be sitting here and reading, and for some people that can kill it. It's just really tough. But if you come to it like, we get to do this. This is like what our bodies and minds are ready for. So let's just enjoy this time together. That's awesome. That's peak learning. It's just awesome.
Yeah. And it's, it's kind of like, I don't know how to say this, but it's just like being okay with things unfolding.
Yes.
Like, or organically in a way, and just seeing where that leads. And then we tweak from there. Right. Like, I was kind of curious, when I started being more flexible with video games and YouTube, like, okay, if I each let them be on their tablets from the beginning of the morning, will they actually play all day? And it's like, they did for about 6 months, because it's like I had gone back and forth on letting them do it, letting them not do it. And it's like, can I trust mom when she says I could? There was just so much baggage around it, and so much stress and energy I had around it. Yeah. And I'm still digging through that. But it's like each parent and each family has to figure out like the limit at which they're comfortable with, and then play around with it. Like you don't know until you try. Right. And so that was kind of the step I had to take, was like, okay, what if I just let them play in the morning instead of having to do these other things before, they could do it? Like, what would that look like?
Exactly.
And so like you said, it ended up flipping. By the end of the day, they're like, I'm bored of video games. I'm like, I never thought I'd hear that.
Imagine that.
If they did, that's, even if they weren't, that's fine. But it's just like, it's just interesting how, like they'd look at the sun after a while and be like, can we go out? And it's like, that meant so much more to me than forcing them to go out and being like, and then be like,
Yeah. So true.
Yeah. So just leaning into their intrinsic motivation and seeing kind of what trade-offs they're making and supporting them in that has just been a eye-opening journey.
Awesome.
It seems to me like you are so committed to the process and learning from them and trusting them. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's kind of rare a little bit. I think that's what I would like to do, but the fact that you like sit on the couch with them and dig into what they're doing with their own video games is great. The fact that you give it 6 months of them like being able to regulate themselves to what is it they actually really enjoy doing now that I don't have these restrictions. I think that's really phenomenal. You should give yourself credit for that, because I think I get antsy after a couple days, or you know, like I start to question, wait a minute, yeah, I don't think this is right. Like my kids are doing video games all day. I must be doing something wrong. And so I just want to commend you on like the time and space you've given yourself and your kids to like work this all out and figure it all out.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like you're falling off a cliff, though.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
that.
Am I free falling? Like, what's going on? But, you know, like one thing that I've learned, like, you know, I love that you said, like, just sitting on the couch and watching. And so, you know, I'd love to just give some anecdotes, because I know that this is a big area for us. We're navigating with tech and screens. And you know, I think part of it was just challenging myself to see and observe the learning. So, for example, like, you know, a big thing for me that I value, obviously, and I know you guys do too, is just kind of like emotional language, right? Like sad, mad, and like giving space for us to talk about those things. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, maybe I should get that, you know, I forget, is it the Big Journal or something? I've seen, like, you know, Instagram ads about it. Big Life Journal, like where you journal your emotions and your feelings. And I was like, well, maybe I need to get that, and maybe I can somehow figure out a way to do that, you know, with my kids, right? And then, you know, that morning I'm just sitting with my daughter, and she's showing me all the different emotions that you can collect in Animal Crossing. And it's literally, she goes, I have all of them except like 5. I'm like, well, how many are there? She's like 150. I was like, excuse me? And then she started showing me these emoticons, right? And it's like all these gradients of happiness. So there's glee, joy, you know, satisfied.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple she doesn't know. And she's like, what's perplexed me? I go, it's kind of like confused, you know, confused. And so we're like going through emotions in the game. And here I am thinking I was going to bring some journal or, you know, like she's already joyfully exploring emotions in this game. And then like what really boggled my mind was like, so that was a very stressful time. My husband's a full-time, you know, entrepreneur. And so you can imagine it can be a stressful job. And she's like, Mom, I want you to see the scene I set up. I'm like, okay. So I come and she goes, well, that's you. That's, you know, the twin brothers. That's my little brother. And that's, you know, my residence. And that's Dad. I'm like, what's Dad doing back there? And she had set up Dad on a chair in front of like a little computer or desk. And he was like anxious. Like, you know, like tears, like, I don't know if it was sweat or tears. And she goes, I know Dad's been anxious, you know, I hope he's doing okay. And I thought, wow, like that is such a cool observation for her to, like, I mean, that's play therapy right there.
Totally.
You know, and it's just like happening under my nose. And it's like, how much of that would I have missed if I just lumped all that into like, she's in front of the screen again.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
You know? So those are things that I notice and that I take joy in, and I make it count.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
Last question I just want to ask you, because we've been talking about this kind of all season, is how do you find community while you homeschool?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So, well, when we first started out, we were part of a Charlotte Mason co-op. And in hindsight, I think it was more for me.
Sure. As it often is, probably, right? Yeah.
Yep. And, you know, just like everything else I was doing throughout the day, I was dragging them along. Like, let's go. And I think they got stuff out of it, but you know, the pandemic for sure kind of was an opportunity to like, you know, get off of that and just sort of, we were all kind of forced to hole up at home. And I think that's also when I felt like, okay, I could really just explore this idea of like, you know, self-direction, unschooling. And I think for all of us, I realized that, you know what, it's okay that I don't have to expect like one thing to meet all of our needs. Like one co-op, like I'm going to find my best friend there. My kids are going to find their best friends there. Like that would be ideal. Right. But just realizing that like maybe our community might not be this like family to family, like we're all going to find all our needs in like one group. Or, like, one
totally.
That like, it's okay that like I have my own thing going and I'm getting my needs met, because like homeschooling and unschooling is not their interest. Like they could care less about being other unschoolers, right? They don't care.
Exactly.
Like, that's my interest. So like I'm diving into, the forums and to learn more about it for myself. But like I don't need to like take them to like an unschooling group just because,
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, so I've kind of like for myself have looked into so Pamela Ricky, I don't know if you guys are familiar with her podcast. She does a podcast called Exploring Unschooling.
Yes.
It's specifically dedicated to just, parents and families who are exploring this lifestyle. So I binged on that. And then to be honest with you, this whole like tech thing was such a huge issue for me. Mm-hmm. Like I literally felt like I was falling off a cliff, like anxious. And like, I'm just being honest, right? Like, it sounds all wonderful now, but like, it's a very scary, real thing when you let go of control of something that you have fear about. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that kind of pushed me over the edge, honestly. And she, in one of her podcasts, she was like, yeah, we have a online network of other families. And I was like, okay, well, let me try it, So just out of desperation, I was like, I just need people who've gone down this path to just let me know I'm not like, ruining my kids.
Yes.
So I joined that this year for the first time. It's, so that's been helpful, just being around other families who are exploring this type of lifestyle, trying to go all in, but also knowing that we're all sort of just on a different place in our journey, right? And so there's just a lot of sharing stories and things like that. That's been helpful. I'm also part of just a book group that's unrelated to homeschooling, but I love reading and new ideas. So I get together monthly with some local women and we read novels and different books. So that's been helpful. And then my daughter, she is into horseback riding. She got into that. And so that's another thing. It's like, in my way, I thought nature club would be like a weekly outing with like a nature co-op, and turns out it's like, she just, I noticed that she would always gravitate to horses and games. Right. So it's like our family was really into a game called, Breath of the Wild. It's a Link game, Zelda game.
Okay.
And she would spend hours collecting and like, training these horses. And then there was another game that had horses, and she would just keep gravitating toward the horses.
Yeah.
So on a whim, I just said, hey, you want to try one lesson with horseback riding? And you can totally say no.
Yep.
So the three older ones said, yeah, sure, we'll try it out. So I only paid for one lesson. I didn't put pressure on them to try to like, do a whole semester or something.
Right.
So, and I said, you guys can, after this, you can do more or you don't have to. Mm-hmm. So again, that's also hard, right? When we sign up for lessons, it's like we can get attached to it. So just really just giving them the opportunity to say a real no. Mm-hmm. And it's been about 6 months now with that too. And for my oldest, it's an emphatic continued opt-in. It's a yes.
So exciting.
And so, so we do that once a week and we meet people through that. So, they have some beautiful grounds. So usually I bring my boys with me too, unless, my husband's working, and then I give them the option sometimes to stay home. But that's been a great opportunity just to meet other horse lovers. There's people who own horses there and will stop by. So like, what I call regulars.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's kind of been an unexpected way to build community that wasn't the way I planned, but better in a way.
Right.
And it gives me an appreciation for people who have skills that I don't. I mean, these people know how to take care of horses, train horses. And so that's just been a wonderful community that we didn't expect. So, and the difference that I see in the way my children are about going there versus the way it was when we had co-op, it's like completely different. Like my daughter's like, okay, did you set your alarm? Are you going to get up in time? Okay, did you pack the carrots for the horses? Like, can you help me?
That's like complete buy-in. Yeah.
She's like, are we going to be late? Like, we got to get there on
right.
time. I'm like, oh my gosh, she sounds like me when we were doing that co-op.
Right. Yeah, that's taking complete ownership of it. Yeah.
You know, and so it's like, oh, it's in her. It just wasn't the thing in the way that I thought this would happen, you know?
Yeah.
So again, so it's just fun to let my kids surprise me, even in the area of community, right? It's just like, when we can follow our children into their interests, I just trust that, like, okay, there will be community for them and maybe for me on the other side.
Yeah.
So we're we'll get there with the younger ones. They're still kind of young enough that they haven't like focused on like this one thing that they want to do outside of the house. But and thankfully, we also have a street with lots of kids from different backgrounds and ages. So during the pandemic, it's been nice just to like go out to our back street, and just see some other kids on their bikes and stuff. So that's also just been a natural way to just connect with other families in our neighborhood.
Well, Deb, thank you so much. You have shared so much wisdom with us today. I feel like I've had probably 10 aha moments while you talked today. So thank you.
I feel like the stuff about like unschooling and tech and screens is going to be so helpful. I mean, you said some things that I think will be really helpful to our audience and that I have not heard before. And so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your podcast. You guys bring, so much diverse perspective, and I've just really enjoyed seeing you guys kind of evolve and, like shift and pivot with your families. And so, that's been really just inspiring and encouraging to me. So thanks so much for having me.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right. That was a great conversation with Deb. Yes. I'm inspired. I'm always just so amazed at all these amazing homeschoolers, but I really loved especially hearing from Deb about how her kind of unschool journey. If you want to hear more from Deb Shin, join Patreon today. We had an extended interview with her, and she talked so much more in depth about all the things. And so head on over there. Plus, you're going to get so much more content on Patreon today. So patreon.com/homeschoolunrefined, and it's only $5 a month.
Yeah. And again, if you want to follow Deb on Instagram, she is at home_and_beyond.
All right.
Let's move on to our loving this week. Maren,
all right. LTW.
What are you loving this week?
Okay. I'm loving an album, a music album, and it's kind of taken over the car and my home this week. And it is, the artist's name is Little Sims.
Okay.
And she is a British Nigerian rapper and apparently an actress. I don't know. I looked her up on Wikipedia, and I just am enamored by this album. And just, when you listen to something and you're like, this person is a genius. Where have they been my whole life? Well, first of all, she was born in 1994, so wasn't born for a long time of my life.
So that's where she's been. But also, she's been unborn.
That's where she's. But this album is like poetry put to amazing music, and her voice is like butter, and it's just so smooth and enveloping.
All right,
that's what it is. It's enveloping. I first heard a song of hers on The Current, which is a local radio station, NPR. And they play kind of like new up and coming music or local music or whatever. But anyway, they played this, song, and I Shazammed it.
Okay.
Do you still have Shazam on your phone?
I do. Yep.
Yeah. So I did that, and I immediately downloaded the album and have not stopped listening to it. Interestingly enough, one of her songs was on the episode of Dickinson that I just watched.
Your LTW from last week.
Which was my LTW from last week.
But you didn't
So
notice.
I was like, wow.
Or you knew. Did you know after?
I just watched it like yesterday.
And you were like, Little Sims. Okay.
And so, like when two of your favorite things collide and you're like, oh, I know I'm in the right place. This is amazing.
That's awesome.
Oh,
okay, so Little Sims.
I'm in heaven right now. Little Sims. Yes.
There's only one album, I take it, so far.
You know what? Actually, she has like 4.
Oh, okay.
This is her 4th album,
okay.
but this is the most apparently critically acclaimed album.
Okay.
She has won awards though before this. So it's, yeah.
That's awesome.
So I love just like discovering new people. For me. New to me.
For sure.
Anyway. So yeah.
I love it.
All right. How about you, Angela? What are you loving this week?
Well, I have an album too, but it's a little bit more mainstream. I'm not discovering someone new.
Yeah. It's okay.
So, this is Taylor Swift's Red album that she just re-recorded.
Taylor's version.
Yes. Okay, it came out on Friday, a couple weeks ago or whatever. Yes, a little over a week ago it came out.
Yeah, yeah.
And what she's doing is she doesn't own the masters to her songs on this album or some of her other albums, and so she's
right, and it's been a fiasco.
It's been a fiasco.
Like she's tried to get them back,
and so she is re-recording the songs so that she owns them, and she is adding to some of them and adding to the album. So there's a lot of new songs on here, a lot of old songs, and she's reimagining some of them. But the highlight from this album is the All Too Well song, which there is a 10-minute version of now. So if you're a Taylor fan, if you're a Swiftie, you know about All Too Well. But basically, it's a song about a relationship that she was in with. It's obvious that it's Jake Gyllenhaal, but she never says that. This is a 3-month relationship from 2010 that she writes about in this song. And so there is a new 10-minute version, which apparently she had written all those years ago, but had to cut it down.
Right.
So now she recorded the entire version. So we got a lot of more juicy details about. But it's not just that. The lyrics are amazing. She is an amazing lyricist. It is just, wow. How does she think of these phrases, right? I can't even believe it. And then on top of that, she recorded a short film of the All Too Well song.
Yes.
And the short film was like 15 minutes. And that is amazing too. That's actually my LTW is the short film, which you can watch on YouTube, on Taylor's YouTube channel. And you did watch it. Okay.
You did.
What'd you think?
Yeah, I thought it was juicy. I mean, in that, like, I was like, oh, wow. Jake. Wow.
Yeah. So she got some actors to play her, like as a young adult, and then to play the love interest, and then they kind of like acted out the scenes.
Yep.
And the acting was phenomenal.
It was
phenomenal.
They picked the right actress too. The perfect.
Like, I the woman who plays young Taylor is Sadie Sink. She's from Stranger Things. She's a character in Stranger Things. Yeah. She plays a teenager in Stranger Things.
I didn't know that.
She was amazing. She was amazing.
She really was.
Yes. So she's going places, I think. So if you haven't seen this, if you're not like a Swiftie, you might still like this short film. It's only 15 minutes long.
Oh,
you should watch it.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. And the song is just good. It's just a great song. So
I watched this probably 6 times. One time with Jeremy, and he's not a Swiftie. I don't even know if I'm a Swiftie, but whatever. He's not a Swiftie.
I think you are.
And he's like, yeah, that was really good. Which he, he doesn't really care.
Yeah.
I don't know, but he's like, yeah, that was really good.
Okay.
So anyway, I think y'all should listen to the album. Both these albums. I'm going to listen to Little Sims too.
I haven't listened to the new one.
You haven't listened to the new album?
No.
Yeah,
no.
It's pretty good. I've been listening.
Are the other songs exactly the same as the old ones?
No,
or they're all
redone.
Kind of newer?
Yeah, they're better.
Okay. They're better.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
And then there's like the special
really
guests,
do like to.
More recording. It's good.
So great. Okay, thanks.
All right, everybody. You can find us on social media at Homeschool Unrefined. We are on Facebook and Instagram. We also have a website, homeschoolunrefined.com, where you can find links to everything that we talked about. And we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Homeschool Unrefined is created and produced by Maren and Angela Sizer. Amanda Ginn is our content and marketing strategist. This podcast is listener supported. Join our growing community at patreon.com/homeschoolunrefined.
We donate 10% of all Patreon income and product sales to The Conscious Kid, a Black and Brown-led organization that has been instrumental in our own evolution and in leading the way in both ideological and tangible change with their work in parenting and education through a critical race lens.
No matter how you homeschool, you are exactly who your kids need. You're doing great.